It's 42 past the hour. Are you feeling it, Joe?
I feel like the burn.
Yeah,
I get all
I
over. It's just, it's crazy.
Yes, you do.
I may have to take this fleece off. I'm so hot.
Okay. Joining us now, former Democratic presidential candidate, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. It is such a pleasure to have you back on the show. First thing I asked him was, how's your wife doing? Because I love her. And he goes, why does everyone ask me that? Because she's kind of awesome. You've been doing the rounds, and I just heard that you said on another network, one of the reasons Trump is doing so well is that he understands some things, able to connect with it. There's a lot of angst, pain, and hurt in this country. And he's saying, I understand what you're saying. So let me flip the question and take it a step further. Why isn't Hillary Clinton doing better?
Well, what I meant to say in terms of Trump and what I said is people are hurting in this country.
Yeah.
And the media has got to recognize it. And politicians have got to recognize it. People watching the show today are worried about how they're going to pay their electric bill. They're worried about their children being able to go to college or paying off their student debt. They can't make it on $10 an hour. They're seeing their jobs go to China and Mexico, and they are angry and they're frustrated. And what Trump does says, okay, I see those problems, and really the cause of the problems is Muslims. The cause of the problems are Mexicans, and he is dividing us up. And the cornerstone of his campaign is bigotry, and I'm going to do everything I can to oppose that. What we have got to do, it seems to me, Mika, when we look at this presidential campaign, I understand people are not enamored with Trump, they're not enamored with Clinton, they weren't enamored with me. But what you got to do is look at the issues. If you are a working person, do you really think that billionaires need a large tax break, which is what Trump is proposing? If you are an ordinary American who listens to science, do you think it's a good idea that a president of the United States rejects science and says that climate change is a hoax when the scientists are telling us it's the great global crisis that we face? So I think that if you look at the issues, raising the minimum wage, rebuilding our infrastructure, expanding health care, not cutting health care as Trump wants to do, Clinton by far is the superior candidate.
Joe, jump in.
Bernie, of course, you get no fight from Mika and a lot of people around the sets with everything that you just said. But if bigotry is the cornerstone of his campaign, as a lot of Americans, a lot of Democrats, a lot of reporters believe, why is Hillary Clinton having so much trouble with millennials, a group that in the Democratic side, you were beloved with millennials? Why are they splitting more towards Trump than they did towards? We're having a hard time getting our arms around it. What is it? Why were you able to connect so well with millennials, and why is Hillary so bad at connecting with millennials?
Joe, that's a fair question, and I honestly don't know the answer. But this is what I do know. In politics, too much we look at personality. We like you, we don't like you. And I think we got to back away from that and say, we're not looking at Trump or Clinton, we're looking at the needs of the American people. And if you just go down the list in terms of experience, but also in terms of views on the issue. I worked with Clinton, Joe, at the end of the campaign on higher education. And what we concluded, and she is public on this, and will make it happen, is that every family in America of 125,000 or less, that's 83% of our people, will be able to send their kids to a public college or university tuition free. You know what, Joe? That's pretty good. That is pretty damn good. Yeah. Clinton wants to raise taxes on the rich at a time of massive income and wealth inequality. Trump wants to give huge tax breaks to billionaires. That's wrong. So I would just simply say to the millennials, to anybody else, look at the issues. Don't get hung up on Trump's kids or whatever the story of the birther issue. Stay focused on the issues of relevance to your life. I think Clinton is far and away the superior candidate.
Jeremy?
So in our latest New York Times poll, a surprisingly high number of young voters, like a third, are voting for third-party candidates, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they don't remember Ralph Nader, right? They don't remember the effect that can have on a general election with the two-party candidates. So, what is your pitch to them?
Good.
I mean,
that's a very good question, and I think the answer is, look. I was a third-party candidate. I began my career running as a third party, getting 2% of the vote. And then I got 1% of the vote. So I know a little bit about third party. I'm the longest-serving independent in the history of the U.S. Congress. But I think that before you cast a protest vote, because either Clinton or Trump will become president, think hard about it. This is not a governor's race. It's not a state legislative race. This is the presidency of the United States. And I would say to those people out there who are thinking of the protest vote, think about what the country looks like and whether you're comfortable of 4 years of a Trump presidency. And I would suggest to those people, let us elect Hillary Clinton as president. And the day after, let us mobilize millions of people around the progressive agenda, which, by the way, was passed, as you know, in the Democratic platform. We worked very hard on that. The most progressive platform in the history of American politics, and say to Secretary Clinton, let us work together to implement that platform. That's where we got to go.
Okay.
Senator Sanders, you were on the debate stage so often with Secretary Clinton. With this upcoming first general election debate, what's your assessment of what she needs to do and maybe how Trump's going to be?
I think she is a very good debater, no question about that. I don't think anyone denies her intelligence, her knowledge of the issues. I think what she has got to do is contrast, get away from all of this personality stuff, which media focuses on every single day, and start talking about the real issues. The American people do not agree with Trump. Mr. Trump, do you really think that billionaires need a massive tax break? Mr. Trump, do you really think that when the entire scientific community tells us that climate change is real and a threat to the entire planet, that you think it's a hoax? What's your scientific basis for that, Mr. Trump? Tell me what you're going to do. You want to abolish the Affordable Care Act, throw 20 million people in this country off of health care. How many of them are going to die? How many of them are going to become much sicker? What's your view on taking on the drug companies? So, you know, I think you stay issue by issue, and I think you expose him for the fraud that he is.
Tough, though, because he's not a traditional from-the-right candidate.
Well, in some ways he is, in some ways he's not. You're right. He is not a traditional candidate. But the other thing is that I would do is to quote some of the Republicans. I don't make it a habit, I really don't, of disparaging people because they disagree with me. I have many conservative friends. But, you know, it is important to know that Mitt Romney, Mr. Former Republican candidate for president, considers this guy to be a fraud and a phony. So I would mostly stay on the issues, contrast the views on the issues to his, and I think she'll do just fine.
So you think she'll do just fine. It's clear you think she's up to the job and has all the experience. What about trust, which some of the polls have shown Americans are struggling with that with both candidates?
Right.
In terms of the platform, do you trust that she will honor it, that she will stick to it, especially pertaining to things like TPP?
Well, Mika, that's a very fair question and raises a broader issues. Then you're going beyond the president into the party, and I want people to think, which political party do they trust to implement their agenda? Hillary Clinton is elected. What I and many other people will be doing is sitting down with her and saying, here's the platform. All right, you talked about doubling the number of community health centers in this country so millions more people will have access to health care. Talking about taking on the drug companies. All right, I'm on the committee that helps write some of this legislation, the Health Education Committee. Madam Secretary, I've written the bill. Let's go forward together. And I think if we have, especially if we have a Democratic majority in the Senate, which I'm working very hard to make happen, we can in fact implement those policies. And then you're going to have to ask, if Trump gets elected and works with the Republicans, what is the Republican agenda? Many of these guys want to abolish the concept of the minimum wage. They want to cut Social Security. Are those the kind of guys you want working with the president? I think most Americans would rather have a Democrats working with their president.
All right, Jeremy.
Are you still hearing this sense of betrayal from your supporters, ones who just found the idea of voting for Hillary Clinton so distasteful that they recoiled? I mean, it was almost like a physical reaction. I mean, so, do you pick up on that still? Is there still that hatred for her?
Among some people, but not among the vast majority. I mean, I think, and I'll tell you what, there is an issue that is bringing the people who voted for me, I think, together, and that is this issue of bigotry. You can disagree with Clinton on this or Trump on that, but we have come so far in this country in struggling against discrimination and racism and sexism that we do not want to go back to a time when, you're having Trump. The big debate, I guess, of today, what's the debate? Whether or not, the birther issue again, we're bringing that up. This is insane, okay? This country has spent too much.
It's sad.
It is sad. We have spent hundreds of years fighting against racism and sexism and all that stuff. To have that debate again, young people do not want to see that debate. They're way beyond that. They don't want to think we're blaming Muslims, we're blaming Mexicans for our problems. And I think that will bring a lot of those people around in support of Clinton.
So we hear Al Gore might be hitting the trail for Hillary Clinton. She's got the President Obama who went out. President Obama went out on the trail for her. Joe Biden, Bernie
Elizabeth
Sanders,
Warren.
Elizabeth. I mean, this is. The surrogates are good on the Democratic side, and you are amazing. We really, really appreciate having you back on the show.
Well, thank you.
And it's good to see your voice out there. Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you very much.